guys, it is Punksnugglybear, and we are going to be doing a new broadcast called Is It Worth It? And this is just going over games for collections that are fairly highly priced in the market now today, and going around and seeing through gameplay, artwork, and collection content if the game is truly worth it. Today we are showing off Panic Resturant, which is a game produced by Taito. The designer of the game is Kenji Eno, who is also of the fame for the D series, which is a survival horror series that was released on PlayStation and 3DO. This game originally came out in Japan in April '92, then the North American release in October '92, and then the PAL EU release happened in May of '94. I'll be going through the first level in both the American version and the Japanese version. Now, this is one of the more sought after games in the collecting for the NES market. Currently in 2018 the game goes for about 482. If we go back to about 10 years to 2008, it was about 252, and mind you, this is loose just for the cartridge itself. 2013 saw it about 169, and then 2016 was about 600, and then today, complete in box with the manual, we're looking at about $1,000 for this one video game. So overall, it is a pretty expensive collection piece to have if you're going for a full completion assess on the NES. Now overall, for how the gameplay, sound design, and box art looks, it's something to definitely revel at. The box art for the first game, for the North American, is probably one of the scariest box arts I've ever seen, and it's something that for me is definitely not something that it's like, oh, I need to have this. This definitely has a unique feel to it. The Japanese version for the Famicom is somewhat friendlier, very clean, but as you can see through the two differences as the next level is coming up, you'll notice that the character sprite is different and the gameplay is a little bit different. Character sprite here has no curly mustache, looks more like a young man, but it's going to be somewhat of the same playthrough. The bad guy in this name is Odorbs, like the French word, and in the English translation they have it as O-dubs, which I thought is a cool little nifty thing that is weird because it's a French word not translated into Japanese, but when it was translated into English they seem to have the mess up there. Also, that you notice that instead of the clobber pan of what the North American version had, they have the headbutt, so you're just using the chef's head to knock out your opponents. I also find it funny the way you gather health in these games is by collecting candy, and then you're fighting off actual normal foods like carrots, sausages, hamburgers. There's skewers in later levels, and it's definitely interesting. Now, moving on from just overall artwork and style is how the game plays. The game overall is a fairly straightforward adventure game. You move across the screen to get to the final boss, fight the final boss, beat the level. The one thing I like about this gameplay mechanics is that if you get hit, you lose your current item and go back to the clobber pan or the chef's headbutt. Wow, that was a real good mistake there. And you restart every level with how many hearts you have left. You have a maximum of 4 hearts, which you can gain through the slot machine or picking up certain candy. So as you see there in the slot machines, I got the 4 heart bonus. And then I like how each weapon has a different field of range. The chef's headbutt and clobber pan are a very small, tight window to hit somebody, versus if you're looking at the spoon, has a larger window. Fork is you are able to bounce on people, and the plate is the thrown item. All do the same damage. All enemies take 1 hit of damage to die, so it makes it for fairly easy until you get to more enemies on the screen, difficult enemies later on in the game. Here's an example of another level further down in the game on the North American version. See, we have skewers and lawn chairs, and the trajectory of these enemies are different paths. So we have ones going diagonals, ones jumping straight up and down, and that's something that I find challenging, but definitely something that is manageable. It's something where you do have the opportunity to go back and forth, and be able to trigger the actions of these enemies so that you'd be able to move forward with the level. Another thing is that these enemies do spawn back if you go off screen and then back onto the screen. So if you leave their little quadrant and then come back, as you can see right there, the skewer will reappear and it will attack you. Also, for some of the running enemies, they'll just run through the doors and disappear off the level. So overall, gameplay and functionality, really solid. I would say that there's few things that can make it a little bit more challenging. A lot of the jumps are not small one-button jumps. You do have a window of opportunity, and the patterns are easier to learn. Overall, it's a solid, I would say, 8 out of 10 gameplay. Moving from gameplay into the soundtrack, which would probably be my third and final talking point of this game, is that it's a very simple soundtrack. Most of the levels sound good, except for the ice level, which for some reason has a screaming part, or screaming background to it. It'll show up later after this section of gameplay. You'll see the ice level that I'm talking about and how I don't particularly like that sound display. Even though most of the game has a happy and natural sound to it, for some reason the soundtrack for that one level is a very big disturbance to me. Also, why I gave the gameplay 8 out of 10 is because some of the bosses definitely can be cheesed with the right item. You'll also see that I have another clip of that at the very end. And then, as I was talking about how enemies respawn, you get into traps like that, where you grabbed the spoon, fell off the screen, but the turkey respawned, so that you actually did have to take a hit of damage to move up the ladder. Now, what this game reminds me of is just more of a close fighter Mega Man. You do have the damage for the plate and everything, but this one you just go and swinging and killing enemies. I did like this part of the game because there's mini games involved where you just collect for additional points. So if you're a high score completionist type of person, you don't lose lives. You would love these mini games. For every one fish you grab, you get 100 extra points, and it's a nice breakup to the regular gameplay, to the regular just run, beat everything up type of world. Now here's the key example to the level where I had a problem with the soundtrack. The high pitch just ringing in the background, I think, ruins this one level. The ice mechanics are something that are really fantastic, add a layer of depth, but the soundtrack to this one is just horrendous. And then, like I was saying, this is the boss that I was talking about earlier, about if you have the white weapon, you can just somewhat cheese the level by keeping a distance and throwing it at him. So overall for this game, like I said, gameplay, solid 8 out of 10. Art, with the box art, little too scary for me. I don't understand why you'd have it. Collecting would probably be somewhere 7 out of 10, 6 out of 10, and sound overall, just because of that one level, would be, I would say, another 6 out of 10. So for me, honestly, this is something I don't need in my collection, but it's something that would be nice for a completionist collection. So my recommendation, not worth the $500.